Well, the Monaco Grand Prix was another difficult weekend for the Ferrari team, which has singularly failed to capitalise on its pre-season testing pace and has yet to win in 2019. Lots of work being done by the team to understand its problems and get on top of them. There's been talk of concept changes, all sorts of possibilities. So I'm joined by Scott Mitchell to try and understand exactly where Ferrari is. Well, Scott, simple question. Where are Ferrari with understanding their limitation and how to solve it?
Well, they came to Monaco still trying to work out what their main problem was, effectively. I want to say they're narrowing it down. There's been a lot of blame attached to the new for 2019 tyres. Not necessarily that Pirelli have stitched them up or anything like that, but just the phenomenon with the tyres is, to quote team principal Matteo Binotto, completely different to last year. They've gone from needing to keep the tyres cool to struggling with the warm-up, and they're just not quite getting the most out of them, especially not in the way that Mercedes is. And we know that that's been a problem for most teams up and down the grid. And it does suggest that Ferrari's car does have this really impressive peak performance. You say they had a really strong pre-season. They should have won the Bahrain Grand Prix comfortably. They were quick in Azerbaijan at times as well. But for whatever reason, they just can't quite get that consistency from this car concept. And Binotto and Ferrari insist that the front wing design that they've got and that the fundamental concept's not the problem. It's just where do they need to refine it? What do they need to improve to actually get everything working the way it should be? And as it stands, they're still not, I don't believe, entirely sure what the root cause is.
Well, it's interesting talking about the concepts of the front wing. They say they're going to stick with it. For this year, the rules changed, so we had this move away from outwash front wings. Ferrari has tried to maximise the outwash it is getting by not having the maximum surface area, if you like. As you move outboard on the wing, it sort of sweeps down, and there's a few teams that have gone in this direction, so that does mean they sacrifice a little bit of peak downforce, and this seems to be at the heart of what they're trying to work out. How much do you focus on the overall peak downforce? How much do you focus on efficiency and the advantages you can gain downstream on the car by maximising the outwash?
Yeah, and they've got a very efficient car. It's very quick in a straight line, but it's the trade-off is too much at the moment. They're not quick enough, especially through slow corners. They're struggling, and it's that twisted blend of mechanical and aerodynamic. And I think this is why it's so tricky for them to actually work out what they've done wrong and what they need to fix, but it's crucial that they get on top of it, because of the 2019 championship is slipping out of their grasp so quickly. There are people who think that they're very close to needing to write off 2019 pretty much, because their problems combined with the way that Mercedes have started the season is terrible for Ferrari's title chances for this year. But coupled with that is the sooner they get on top of the problems, the better it is for the 2020 car. And if they wait too long, if they don't find this cause and address it and fix whatever's wrong with either the concept or whatever it is in their understanding or whatever the problem may be, that's going to carry over to the 2020 car, because they're already on. 2020 started months ago. They're well into that project, and as Binotto says, they've not got much time to address anything that needs to be addressed on the 2020 car without compromising that.
This is the fascinating thing, isn't it? Really understanding, because it's easy on paper to say, well, okay, give up on this year, focus on 2020, but you need to know the answers. And it could be aero, it could be tyres, it could be down to the mechanical platform, the suspension design they've got, which is obviously similar to what they had last year. So they really, really need to understand it. And it can just be an interaction of all of those factors and others. So it's amazing that a team of this size is 6 races in and still not quite 100% sure of what the problem really is, the root causes. They know the symptoms, not necessarily the cause.
Exactly. And one of the positives is that Binotto is saying that they're willing to change elements of it. He said that if they need to change the front suspension, they will redesign parts of the front suspension. It's just at the moment they're sticking to their guns, and they don't believe that what they've gone for is necessarily wrong. It's just maybe they're implementing it in the wrong way, or maybe one small thing is out. Because this is what it all goes back to. Is I know that we can now look at it and say that Bahrain is a bit of a one-off, and that maybe Bahrain was a bit of a fluke, but they were also very, very quick at times in Azerbaijan. And also in Azerbaijan, Mercedes went from being nowhere in FP3 to pole and then winning the race. And Toto Wolff said at the time that they'd done nothing different. It was just because they couldn't get the tyres working in FP3. So as much as it's really easy to use tyres as an excuse, and it can be a bit of a cop-out to say, oh, we don't understand the tyres. That's the only part of the car that makes contact with the track. So it's absolutely crucial to performance. And whatever Ferrari's problem is, I'm sure they're clinging to the fact that they've seen peaks from this car. They know that there's more potential, but sooner rather than later, if they don't actually start maximising it, then it's all just going to go to waste.
And of course with tyres, it is such a black art, because on a Formula 1 car you can measure just about everything. There's one thing you can't measure with the tyres. You can measure the carcass temperature, you can measure the surface temperature, but the compound, which is the key, you've got to have the compound at the right temperature to switch on the tyre, really get the chemical bonding to the track. That you can't measure directly. You can only infer it from a combination of the carcass temperature and the tread temperature, the surface temperature. So this seems to be one area where there's a problem, because not only is it thinner tread, so you don't work the tyres in the same way, because the temperature build-up is a function of squashing and pushing sideways, if you like, working the rubber, so that'll happen less, but also maybe that equation for inferring the temperature's different. So it feels like they're flying blind in that regard, and that's why measuring it all is so difficult. And then they have to understand if that really is the problem, or whether that's causes something else, whether it's suspension geometry, this kind of thing. So this could take a long time for Ferrari to really, really get on top of it. And the danger is they might bake in concept problems into their 2020 car that will take then time to sort out for next year.
Well, that's why they're so keen to get to the root cause, because addressing those problems could save 2019, but it could also make or break 2020. And you're right, the tyres, it's so complicated. Let's not forget that traditionally, with the previous tyre, before we switched to this thinner gauge Pirelli for this year, Ferrari always had that ability that they were always much sort of better on the tyres, especially in the race, because they could manage the tyres. They didn't work them quite so hard. And Mercedes has been sort of a long-running characteristic, the DNA of the cars that come out of Brackley, that they've worked the tyres, particularly the rear, quite aggressively. And I mean, in the early days especially, they struggled with that overheating. But now, and it's too easy to say, oh well, the Mercedes works the tyres harder, so now that the tyres are slightly different, they're getting the most out of it, because you need to work these tyres really hard to get them up to temperature, and Ferrari are struggling because they're just too easy on the tyres and the cars like that. But it's difficult to sort of ignore that is the recent history and the trend. Maybe that's it. Maybe the way that the tyres are plays to that fundamental DNA of these cars. But that's what Ferrari needs to get to the bottom of. They need to know whether or not they need some kind of fundamental change, or if with more understanding and something small, they can get on top of it quickly.
Is it just a case that Mercedes are just better and Ferrari have done a good job and Mercedes just done a great job? Are we absolutely certain there is this fundamental problem that something's not connected together? I guess the fact that we have seen these peaks of performance, such as Bahrain, means that Ferrari aren't making excuses, are they? There's a genuine issue.
No, and also they're not. It's not like they've fallen away massively. They're still the second fastest car, maybe the third fastest on the weekends where Red Bull's particularly strong, but they're doing a much better job than most. Admittedly, there's a lot more resource, so you could argue that what you're producing per £1,000,000 or euro or whatever currency you want to apply, they're not doing as good a job, but they've still made the second/third fastest car. Bahrain, they had the fastest car. Azerbaijan, most of the weekend, they had the fastest car. So it just comes down to small margins, and as Sebastian Vettel said earlier in the Monaco weekend, these fine details are what they're missing at the moment, and Mercedes is absolutely on top of its game and working at very close to, if not 100% capacity.
Well, another very difficult weekend for Ferrari in Monaco. Lots of work still to be done. They'll be going to Montreal in the Canadian Grand Prix, hoping that they will have answered some of their questions and can be back up there challenging Mercedes on form.